Greetings, fellow adventurers, and welcome to the Couple of Nerds podcast. I'm DnDWife, the creator of DnDWifeStories.com, and your co-host. Joining me is the man behind the screen, my brilliant dungeon master, and also my husband, Eguile. Say hi, Eguile.
Hey everyone, excited to be here sharing our nerdy adventures with all of you.
Absolutely. So what's Couple of Nerds all about? Well, we're diving into the realms of Extrayus, sharing our experiences, playing D&D in our apartment, and exploring the intricate tapestry of relationships both in and out of the game.
And we got some exciting segments for you all, from lore deep dives to crafting tips, artwork showcases, and relationship advice on and off the table. We've got a little bit of everything for every kind of adventurer.
So whether you're a seasoned adventurer or a tabletop newbie, we invite you to join us today. Tune in, relax, and enjoy the magic of Couple of Nerds. May your rolls be natural 20s and your adventures be legendary.
Log entry 447. Dr. Matthias here, the ever-curious pursuer of knowledge stranded on this particular realm of Extrayus. Today's focus is the intricate tapestry of life that inhabits this world, the MyrRin and the Humes. An endless source of fascination both in their individual uniquenesses and the potential they hold for my future clandestine experiments. Let us first peer into the convoluted history of the Humes. Born from the crystalline essence of some cosmic anomaly, their rapid evolution has led to an array of subspecies. The Dimmen, adaptable and elusive, the Stomm, towering and robust, the Kanon, birthed from the forest, the Skegga, subterranean Neanderthals. And then there's the standard Humes, the common yet various subject of my scrutiny. Their familiar disputes over their shared ancestry, though utterly trivial, provide me with endless entertainment. How blissfully ignorant they are on their interconnected cosmic origins. Imnaria, a land teeming with Hume subspecies, has become my primary focus. Each corner of its diverse landscape houses unique adaptations, the result of their incessant battles and territorial squabbles. Their disputes over lineage makes them the perfect specimen for my clandestine observations. It's truly amusing how they bicker and quarrel, oblivious to the interconnected web of their existence. Now on to the MyrRin, a race of creatures spawned not from this cosmic essence, but from the very core of Extrayus itself. Soulless, their existence is merely utilitarian. Born of primal animals, their evolution has been sluggish, only recently achieving some semblance of what you could call an Iron Age. Primitives, yet strangely they are unified. The MyrRin's innate bond and unspoken connection between subspecies is a peculiar phenomenon. Unlike the fractured Humes, the MyrRin recognize that their strength lies in unity. This cohesion, though inconvenient, could be exploited for my future experiments. How curious that such primitive beings display a sense of unity that their more evolved counterparts lack. As my observations continue, the Humes of Inaria remain the epicenter of my studies. Their unique properties, their impressive lifespans, and a strong physical constitution makes them ideal subjects for my experimentation. The secret locked within their very essence are the keys to unlocking the mysteries that still elude my return. Perhaps I can find others who see potential the use of this land as well. While staying in the shadows, I will manipulate the threads of Extrayus, weaving a narrative of discovery and experimentation. These creatures, unaware of their roles, dance unwittingly to the tune of my scholarly curiosity. As I navigate the labyrinth of Extrayus, my pursuit of knowledge and experimentation knows no bounds. End log entry 447. Dr. Matthias signing off. Soon the curtain will rise, and the the show will begin.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Couple of Nerds. I'm DnDWife, your host, and with me is my Dungeon Master, co-host, and husband, Eguile.
How's it going, everyone?
So welcome to episode 8, Lore Drop, Realms Unveiled, the Chronicles of the Hume and MyrRin in the Tapestry of Extrayus.
Yeah, I mean, as my favorite doctor, Dr. Matthias, let us know there.
Oh,
I know.
Evil, mean person.
Yeah, but I mean, he's shaping up to be a pretty good antagonist.
I hate him so much. Luna hates him so much.
But it's cool to have a doctor-like entity out there in the world doing a little extra research for us.
Yeah, but like it's personal now.
I'm sure we're gonna get a lot more research notes from Dr. Matthias in the future. I'm sure he has a lot to say about the other races.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine what he has to say about everyone else, but at least we now know what he thinks of the Hume and the MyrRin.
Yeah, which obviously kicks us off, and we thought would be the best place to start would be looking at the dynamics between our two unique races that we've created and that have diverged into these different subspecies that have kind of mirroring a little bit to Dungeons and Dragons, but has been reshaped into our own image.
Yeah, we wanted to create our own different type of people, and they're kind of, in many cases, polar opposites of each other in ways of development.
Oh, yeah, and that's the cool thing about our universe is that each of the species has its own unique method of growth and evolution.
Yeah, it's really interesting to know, the MyrRin are natural-born creatures of the world, and so they were animals that evolved and became these more sentient beings.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to look at it is very comparison to human evolution, essentially. Starting off as a smaller creature, growing over what takes those hundreds, millions, eons of time.
They took the long way around. They had to learn the hard way and grow into their, what they are now. Which is fully functioning civilizations. Yeah,
and when you look in comparison to the Hume, or as we like to call them, the Emissyn, and that's kind of more of the unifying term that kind of encompasses all the subspecies of Hume.
Yes.
But the way that they were generated is through the creation story and this kind of big bang, but a big bang of elder gods and these eldritch beings and everything that made our previous campaign.
They got blasted apart.
Destroyed, right?
Yeah.
And so just these kind of shards of what looked like would be like spears of quartz and moonstone just kind of scattered across the universe.
Clear stone, but like glowing almost from within.
Yeah, and so what ended up happening is as the kind of land masses were converging to create the planet known as Extrayus, these shards struck the planet.
Yeah, they rained down.
And so when they hit the planet, they kind of broke into these different fragments, and these fragments eventually shaped themselves into an amalgamation of what we would consider humans, aka Hume, and created now this being that essentially at its very core is this essence of divinity, essentially.
They have the little shards kind of encased in them, in their souls. And that's kind of what generated the beginning of the soul.
And really, it's this kind of magical battery, which is why almost every Hume starts out its entire existence as a sorcerer. They already have this innate control over magic naturally that essentially toddlers are casting 5th level spells like it's a cantrip.
In the early times, it was really hard to even regulate that kind of stuff because everybody could do everything from the get-go.
And so as we spoke of, there's this time of Eden, and during that time you had the Humes that essentially came into existence already perfect, nearly.
Essentially, yes, because they were just templates of creation magic, raw creation magic.
And so they essentially just had this opportunity to just learn and dive and learn more spells, become more adapted to magic as well as the environment around them. Because the special, unique property of a Hume is actually adaptability. So that shard in them, as they are in environments that may struggle, they will use that shard to adapt to any environment.
Yes, and it's that adaptability that kind of allows them to transcend really far into leaps of exploration and ideas.
Yeah, and whereas with the MyrRin, you see now, like, as we've started in the campaign, we're now seeing the MyrRin now in current era, they've barely hit the Iron Age.
Yes, they're starting to have the, higher civilization, but it's really difficult. They each because there are the different beast folk that are make up amalgamations of the community. They are a little bit fragmented, but they're also unified in a way because they're all of the same land, of the same people. And so while they are a little fragmented in their own different societies and a little separated from each other, there is that unifying thought that we are all one.
Oh, yeah, and that's also the distinction between Humes, where each Hume views itself as this very individual person, that their magic is their own because it comes from their body. So that means they kind of have this more possessive feeling for their individuality, whereas the MyrRin come together as this community first because they know that that's their strength, not the individual, but the group as a whole.
So the tribes of different beast folk, they come together. Obviously, there are the lion folk and there are bird folk, different types of bird folk. There's different types of aquatic folk as well. And so they all have these different tribes, right, of each other. And so they are a little separate from one another, even though they are unified. And so sometimes they do run into issues. And this is why they're not maybe viewed as developed as the Hume.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously understand that there are divisions, and like some of the issues you find is you have the differences of bird folk versus a ground type bird that's much smaller versus a hawk type bird folk. So they're obviously going to be viewed as predator and prey. And so even the MyrRin understand that they are one unified community, but they are also still creatures and beings of the world that might have to hunt each other from time to time.
Yes, the circle of life certainly keeps going, and these are creatures that were once animals and have those instincts still within them, even though they are sentient and learning to kind of adapt, a little like Zootopia. They're starting to come together.
Oh, yeah.
They can coexist, but, it is difficult, and they do have to kind of break that sort of prey-predator sort of idea.
Dynamic. And as we've learned, as the story has progressed, there's this terminology of lesser and greater MyrRin.
Yes, they do have those distinctions, and it's really interesting to see that the greater MyrRin value individual strength, whereas the lesser MyrRin tend to value strength in numbers, strength in community.
Yeah, and it tends to be obviously the weaker, the kind of more prey-type MyrRin fall into this an artificial category of lesser MyrRin.
Yes, sometimes they're unfairly categorized as lesser MyrRin just because certain affiliations or because they hold certain alliances with other beast folk that are also considered lesser.
Yeah, and it's kind of the exact opposite when looking at the Humes, in that their abject individuality forced them actually to go through evolutionary changes, and that adaptability, that versatility created all of the different subspecies by their incessant need to separate from one another. So by spreading across the continents of Extrayus and going to the various extreme areas, those environmental impacts actually change the very essence of the Hume, creating our subspecies. Some of which I've created, which I've fallen in love with, and you've created as well. And we've kind of worked on some of these cool little idiosyncrasies that each of these subspecies has.
They've been awesome to talk about. There are the Hume that went to the mountains and became taller, sturdier creatures that could withstand lower temperatures. There were the Hume that went and went under the mountains,
Yeah, so that obviously being the Stomm, and that, they have the biggest thing with them is they have these long kind of outstretched arms for a much more kind of adapted to climbing mountains, much more barrel chested, that you would always experience with natural humans in higher elevations. They're more adapted to holding their breath for longer terms because they've adapted so much.
Yeah.
And like you said, talking in terms of the Skegga, which is our underground civilization that have essentially gone blind.
Yeah.
But in doing so, have crazy echolocation and can hear the slightest noise. They can hear the stone cracking from miles away.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the cool thing about them is that they've adapted to being underground, that their skin has almost become stone-like as well. And they've found a way to even consume gemstones and various crystals to keep themselves alive.
Like food.
Oh yeah, and so they have no real need to return to the surface. They've completely, in fact, they're one of the few races that actually has no clue the Reaping Games ever occurred.
Were they ever affected?
No, because they were
Nobody
so
knew.
Subterranean. Nobody actually knew that this race exists.
Oh, that's interesting. So do they have shards?
Yes, they still technically are original Humes. It's just obviously every time they adapt, and the more adaptation that occurs, the more that fragment is consumed in order to
Create
allow
that
that
adaptation.
change. So essentially, though they have these great physical abilities, their magical abilities have significantly diminished to create this kind of barrier. So then you also have even more unique ones like the Kanan, and they represent the nomadic tribes of the Humes. They never could find a home they loved. They could never find a location. But the problem is, much of Extrayus in the early life was just these large grasslands.
Yeah, open plain.
Open plains, not a lot of food resources or kind of the ability for nomads to survive.
Yeah.
And over time, their connection to the land, the trees, the nature, they saw that their physiology changed to be more plant-like. In fact, they have green skin, not for pigmentation, but it's actually through photosynthesis.
Yeah.
They've developed the ability now to live off of the sun's rays and very little moisture, to now be in an environment where there is little resources. It no longer affects them. They've adapted past it.
Oh, they're like pseudo plant people, but not.
No
just, leaf. Yeah. It's their
what
skin has adapted.
They've created, their bodies have created these different ways to kind of adapt to the system.
Yeah.
And then you have like what we talk and is gone in a lot of the stories are Dimmen, which are kind of an amalgamation of a few of the characters and races of D&D.
Yeah.
But they represent the kind of ducking for cover. They are very paranoid, very
Skittish.
scared.
Yeah.
And in doing so, they have pushed their minds to the limit. So they've focused, and their brains and their intelligence levels have grown to significant portions, though their bodies have shrunk.
Yes.
And they are much smaller, standing at most 3 to 4 foot at the most, at a crazy tall, like, basketball player Dimmen
People
would be
mistake
4
them for
feet.
children.
Yeah, they are very tiny creatures with these larger heads because they focused on intelligence as being the strongest. Not magic, but intelligence.
Yes, they actually shun magic. They don't like it.
They are our technopaths. They
Yes.
are our ones. These are the guys creating all our technology in Extrayus, and
They're
are
on the
people
forefront.
to very much watch out for.
Silicon Valley, baby.
But just like there are so many uniquenesses in the Hume that was created from the shards and their adaptation, there are very, very unique subspecies within the MyrRin as well, right?
Yes, they're like we were talking about. There's the burrowing bird folk that don't fly. They can't.
And it's not magic too.
No.
Like they don't have magic.
It's very rare to see a MyrRin with magic. They usually don't. The ones that do, it's more of a shamanic type of magic. It's more of a conduition of the land,
Which is what we call like primal magic.
Yes, yeah, it's definitely a raw style of magic. So if it's healing, it's a very raw type of healing. It's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be seamless.
Nuts and berries and twigs.
Mashed together to create a poultice that's
It'll work, but it's
not the greatest, as opposed to like medicine.
But some of them are, they can like shape the ground.
Yeah, and it's not so much that they shape the ground, but rather because they're so in tune with the earth and the land around them, because they're MyrRin, the land moves around them for them. It acquiesces to them because it loves them so much.
And that's what's cool, is that they
have magic, but don't really have magic.
Yeah,
so there's
it's
no
not
spell,
their magic.
There's no counter spell.
No.
There's no components.
No.
They just
No
will
chanting.
They just will it to be.
It just happens naturally because it's a sort of symbiotic relationship with the land. And so they benefit from each other. Same thing with the bird folk that do fly. They have a special connection to the wind, so they can fly for super long periods of time.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing too about the uniqueness also of the MyrRin is that each next of their generation is stronger than the next because they impart their knowledge, they impart their wisdom, their skills, their strengths, which is why they grow so much. But that's again what causes this cool kind of dichotomy between the Hume and the MyrRin because it's the exact opposite once again. And it really what it comes down to is the cosmic shards.
Yes.
And how much of an impact that plays, not only in the mechanical aspect of our story, but also in the lore as well. And the big thing is that these shards are still occurring even in the modern story. You guys have already discovered that there's a deity that's being kind of affiliated with these shards.
Yes.
Because there are still these kind of sun or star showers, and there are these kind of essences where meteors are striking the planet.
Yep.
But we all kind of know it's just more of this cosmic force entering the world.
We know that in the early times there was a huge shower of those shards.
Oh, it was like raining,
but they never
months.
Really stopped. They're always either individual or every now and then spread across the world. And sometimes there are meteor showers or shard showers.
Yeah.
Where it is quite a few falling to the planet.
And that's kind of the interesting thing is that so. Another aspect with Humes is that when they give birth, their progeny kind of share not the maximum amount of how large, because they obviously don't take it from their parents, but they kind of get the max they can get from however their parents have. So there's kind of this prioritization on the strongest of the strong having as many children as they, I mean, we're talking 15, 16,
Spread
20,
love,
as
baby.
many kids as they can have because this was the only way to ensure that the
strongest make it out.
And so that created this cool uniqueness is because the MyrRin, it's the exact opposite. But the one unique caveat is that during these star showers, these kind of meteor strikes, anyone can be impacted by this.
Yes.
And that's what we're seeing kind of these unique occurrences within even in the MyrRin in that some of them are having abilities they should never have had in the first place.
Yes, because maybe one of those shards hit them.
And who knows what kind of evolutions, as we know that these cosmic shards provide this unique adaptability aspect. So what happens when we start seeing more tag teaming on the other species?
Yeah.
We could see some crazy new changes.
And these shards don't like rip you apart like a normal meteor would.
Yeah, no.
They go into, like, they find the nearest, most adaptable
Completely
host.
harmless.
And they go to it and fall into them. And
for good or bad too, because
Yes.
that's the problem is that they're not, it's not like these seek thine true heroes. No.
Yes, or the best.
It's anything that happens to be a receptacle that can hold it. It has to be something living though.
Yes.
So that's also a caveat in that other creatures can also gain these abilities themselves.
It could be a normal animal.
Yeah,
you
that
know?
suddenly gains sentience because it was struck by a large enough fraction that it becomes powerful. It now can cast magical spells.
And now you've got like a sentient guardian of a forest or something, you know?
Yeah, so within the MyrRin communities, it's viewed as this kind of curse almost because to have these unique abilities means you are different.
Yes.
And whatever different needs to be shunned, it needs to be pushed out. It's dangerous to the group. But then you have the Humes on the other hand.
They embrace the magic because they're so adaptable to it. The Hume that don't adapt to their environment.
I mean, they've started to base an entire religion just around watching the skies to predict when the next meteor will come, to be there,
see if you can catch
and to
one.
hopefully be recharged, and that now your future is set in stone because you're gonna have hundreds of babies because now you're powerful.
Yeah, these are starting to become little shard festivals where people try and catch them one.
Yeah. And of course, during the time of Eden was when all this was allowed to just grow. It was just expansion and discovery, and no one kind of experienced more than that than the Humes because they had this adaptability. They had this way of being able to go and learn and reach the stars. But then you had the MyrRin who couldn't. They had to go the long way. They had to struggle. And so when the reaping games occurred, it was a totally different story for the two races.
Yeah, the MyrRin were largely untouched by the demon forces or the Fey forces. There was no soul, no shard to fight over.
They were viewed as these inferior, they were beasts in the minds of these greater beings.
Who thought they were the best, and so why would they bother with beast people?
And then you had these ripe for the taking Humes that have spread themselves out and broken their
so
connections.
Many juicy little tidbits.
And just found that it was just easy to manipulate and control and destroy and dominate the Hume colonies because none of them worked together. They didn't care.
They have no unity, no community. Whereas the MyrRin were very organized, very much together.
Yeah, for the ones that were looked down for just having spears and very light armor were the ones that actually came out the cleanest out of the reaping games.
Yeah, and because they're sort of these more instinctual creatures of the land, they don't fall for the sort of tricks of the Fae or the demon to bring you in, to lure you in.
They don't have that sense of greed.
No, they understand danger when they smell it
they're
or
not
sense
going to
it.
try to instigate stuff. They are safe in their own home. They don't
their
expand.
communities.
They have no will to get more land.
No, there's no need to.
No, there's nothing to exploit about the MyrRin, and that's what's so great about them. You know, they're such a diamond in the rough that even the other races have ignored.
Yeah, it's only now that the Hume are even trying to set a foothold on the MyrRin continent and even attempting to learn even a little bit about them.
And then what we saw though is that during the Reaping Games after about 50 years of suffering was the first time that some of the races finally were like, okay, we need to come together. This is only going to work if we all come together. And it was the first time in the actual history of the world where all of the races were called upon to send a champion in order to defend the planet.
And unify for
and
once.
Everyone for once was communicating together. And it went horribly wrong.
It just blew up in their faces.
And as we heard, the Scalekin and the MyrRin were the traitors. They interfered and they caused all this backlash.
Yep, that's the story.
Which, unfortunately, no one yet knows why, and because no one from that time exists right now.
Yeah, nobody, at least that we know of, was alive in that time.
So hopefully, that information in future lore drops will be revealed as it is discovered. But it is something always to look into as, the one time that they tried to come together, and again, the MyrRin and the other Scalekin races are the ones blamed.
Yep. It's interesting that it's always kind of the outsiders that get pushed,
right? And
out
so
blamed.
I think that's always that cool dichotomy of creating races that and species that kind of work with our real world kind of thoughts, but also create new dynamics we can explore.
Yeah,
and that was the cool thing about the division and the kind of differences between the Hume and the MyrRin.
Yeah, and not all of them hold those ideas that are so entrenched. A lot of them are actually fighting and trying to change.
Go Tony!
Yeah, the way that both the Hume and the MyrRin think. People are trying to change and adapt better.
It's being that it's been about 250 years since the Reaping Games was shunted. It's finally taken this long for the races to finally kind of go, okay, it's time to start bringing it back together.
Yeah.
And what the interesting thing too is that we have another unique instance in that through the Reaping Games, a whole new subspecies was born.
Yes, completely as a consequence of the Reaping Games, specifically.
Yeah, and these we called the Hellscar. And it was through the fact that the Humes have this innate versatility
The
trait.
adaptability, yeah.
To adapt. Through the influence of the demonic area and just being influenced by their presence, they actually unwittingly adapted to that energy, but it changed them horribly.
Yes. In areas where demonic energy was at its peak, these Humes would adapt and they would look like the demons. They would grow horns, tails, hooves.
They would have kind of off-colored skin. Some of them, their scholaras would be a different color.
Yes.
Similar to other race types of D&D, but a very different take on it, in that their entire culture, though, is very much on absolution for what they literally had no control over, which was their creation.
Yes, but they still feel so horrible about it, and they do not ever. There, it is very rare to see a Hellsguard that is truly evil. They are very religious, very superstitious, and they don't, they don't like any sort of idea that a demon might take over them.
Yeah, and they go through great lengths to avoid that. So one of the things they all wear from birth is they wear these ironclad armors. And in those armors that they wear, and they modify these armors as they grow, they put more kind of chinks and lengths and other attachments to as they grow in size. But in that armor are just runes and enchantments to prevent demonic possession, demonic influence, anything they can do. Whether they work or not, it doesn't matter. They want to do everything in their power to avoid any sort of demonic influence.
Yeah, they don't want to be responsible for, people getting hurt. They don't want to be the ones that get taken over and destroy an entire city or town. And so they take these precautions very seriously. I mean, they take it so seriously that they carry little vials of holy water with them everywhere they go, and they splash it on anybody they see. And I mean anybody.
I kind of want. I debate whether they'll have like super soakers eventually, where they just like spray it out of the
something
distance.
Because they will never go without it.
When I originally wrote that, I didn't actually think it was going to be such a big deal until, as we'll learn later, one of our particular players, it actually is something very bad for him.
Yes, unfortunately, he happens to be susceptible to holy water.
I didn't plan that at all. It just literally, that's what I love about D&D. It just plays itself sometimes.
It caused a bit of an issue, and unfortunately, it did kind of solidify their belief in holy water being this, like, good detector of demonic energy. Whether that's true or not, is a different story, but now there is this kind of growing belief in it.
Yeah. So, I mean, but it's one of those things where, like, their whole existence has only been probably some 250 years at this point. So they are such this new subspecies to an existing species that has existed since creation.
Everybody else has had hundreds of years, and they have history before the Reaping Games. Not that many remember it, but they've been around longer, whereas the Hellsguard have a very short time.
Yeah, and true. And then the other thing, too, is that they're also not the only of these new created races, as there obviously is also the opposite. You don't know anything about this yet because I've been kind of developing it.
You create a ghost species of that.
I gotta hide things every now and then, and it allows for these kind of unique things to come out of nowhere. But
it makes sense that there would be an opposite,
right? So we'll learn more, and obviously we haven't encountered any of those yet, so we're waiting to unveil those once we get a little more into the story. But what we really always want to say is that the biggest thing about this is we want to share this story, but if you have any more questions, we always invite you to come on over to our Discord. Ask us any questions, whether it's D&D related, Extrayus related, whether it's video game related. We'll try our best, but we're really just building a community where people can come together and talk and discuss whatever nerdy pleasures we have.
So if you guys got anything to share, go to our Discord channel. You can find the link on DnDWifestories.com. That's my blog, and you just click the link, and it'll take you immediately to it.
And really with these experiences of these lore drops is really just us showing you how just simple walking through different stories and different examples, you can build your own universe. You don't have to necessarily change everything that you love about D&D or whatnot. You can just make these changes and adaptations that are fit your world, fit your new kind of creation. And it's as simple as just writing it down and start putting ideas on paper. And that's really what we started with. A little notebook that my wife would pull out anytime I came up with a crazy idea about, hey, what if they lived in the ground in these corkscrew things, and it becomes the world and it shapes itself.
It's really nice to see that kind of just naturally occur. And it doesn't happen right away. This is a year-long kind of project, and it's still ongoing. So the world is by no means completed.
And that's kind of our fundamental belief when it comes to Extrayus is that our belief is that we are trying to create a world that not only is created by us, but also a community of people, so that you guys can come and tell us, hey, I'd like to, what if we made this NPC? Heck yeah, we're going to bring it into Extrayus. We'll see what the travelers do when they run into it, and you can hear all about it. But we think that's a unique thing in that everyone can help build Extrayus. It is a large world, people. We need every bit of help and advice we can get. And you could build a city, a town, a people, a play, everything, and help us and have your own mark in this fantasy world that we can all go to together.
Yeah, we'll see what we can set up. But, we have upcoming episodes, too, of Lore
We're
Drop.
not going to be stopping. We got a lot of stuff to cover.
There are more species out there, and some of these are very elusive species.
And which ones are we doing next?
We are doing the Scalekin and the Elm species.
Yeah, see, the Scalekin is near and dear to mine. That's the main one that I've been working on for some time. And the Elm was your child of creation, which even I don't know the exact details. And I'm the DM, but we haven't quite gotten everything because we also haven't seen them in the world. They are very elusive.
They live on their own separate continent, and it is very difficult to travel there.
Yeah, it's just kind of, again, these dichotomies between our races that create a very uniqueness to each one. Though there aren't tons of them, each one is very unique, and especially the Scalekin. They're one of the most unique that I like.
They're fun. They're a very interesting species.
Yeah. So hopefully you all will join us next. Now, obviously, we're doing 2 episodes a week now. This is our first to be able to reveal. This is our first Saturday episode, so I do wanted to be excited about that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us for this.
I'm hoping everyone enjoys listening to us and that they want more, and so we can get more of this content. So you don't have to wait 6 weeks to get another lore drop. It's only going to be every other couple of weeks, and then more information, more for everybody, and hopefully you guys stick with us through it, and we appreciate every listen that we get, and we thank you guys so much.
Yep, thank you very much. And that concludes today's journey through the realm of Couple of Nerds. We hope you had a blast exploring the intricate world of Extrayus. Don't miss out on the visual extravaganza over at our YouTube page at Couple of Nerds Podcast. It's where the magic comes to life with exclusive video segments, art previews, and a peek behind the curtain.
Dive deeper into our adventures by visiting DnDWifeStories.com, your haven for all our podcast transcripts and a treasure trove of content dedicated to the captivating universe of Extrayus.
Your unwavering support is our greatest treasure. Take a moment to weave your thoughts into a review and hit that subscribe button for an enchanting journey with Couple of Nerds.
Join us beyond the podcast in the Extrayus Project Discord. Connect with us, the creators, and even the travelers themselves. Witness the magic unfold in live drawing streams, game alongside us, and step into our digital tavern, the Bard's Haven. Share your stories and characters with fellow adventurers. Visit DnDWifeStories.com for the link to join our vibrant community.
Stay tuned for more tales, more laughs, and more insight into the world of tabletop gaming. Until then, may your dice be kind, your campaigns epic, and your adventures legendary.